There's a number that quietly ruins more first Singapore trips than any attraction on your list, and it's 4 nights. Because 4 nights is almost never 4 days. Your arrival day disappears into a flight, an immigration queue, and a hotel room that isn't ready until mid-afternoon. Your last day disappears into checkout and the ride back to Changi. So, 4 nights usually buys you 3 real days of sightseeing. 5 nights buys you 4. And it gets worse at the short end. Land at 4 in the afternoon on a Tuesday, fly out Thursday morning, and you've booked 2 nights in Singapore with exactly 1 usable day sitting between them. That one miscount is why so many people land here with a plan built for a trip they aren't actually taking. And in a city this expensive, losing a day isn't a small mistake. So, before you book anything, stop counting nights and start counting full, usable days. Everything else in this video is built on that one number. And here's the answer up front, because you shouldn't have to sit through 20 minutes to get it. 3 full days is enough for Singapore if you're disciplined, and if the city itself is what you came for. 4 full days is the strongest default for most first-timers, and it's the sweet spot for a reason almost nobody explains properly. 5 full days changes the trip completely, but not the way you'd expect. It doesn't really buy you more attractions, it buys you something better than that. Now, that's the recommendation. The rest of this video is the part that actually protects your trip, which is what each of those choices costs you somewhere else. Because there's one place on this island that can swallow a third of a 3-day trip without you noticing, and a lot of itineraries drop it in like it's a casual afternoon. We'll name it in a few minutes. First, the map, because Singapore's geography will do most of your planning for you if you let it. Think of the island in 5 pieces. 3 of them sit close together in the middle. There's the bay, which is Marina Bay, Gardens by the bay, the Civic District, and the river. Next to it are the Old Quarters, which is Chinatown, Kampong Glam, Little India, and Bugis. And that's where most of the food and most of the character live. And just west of both, there's the Green Spine, which is Orchard Road running up to the Botanic Gardens. Those 3 are your city. They're close, they're on connected train lines, and you can move between them in 10 or 15 minutes. Then there are 2 outliers, and this is the important part. They sit at opposite ends of the island. Sentosa is the resort island just off the south coast, and it's home to Universal Studios and the Singapore Oceanarium. Mandai is the wildlife precinct in the far north, and it holds the zoo, the night safari, bird paradise, river wonders, and more. Here's why that geometry matters more than anything else we'll say today. Those 2 outliers are the only things on a standard Singapore list that reliably eat an entire day each. They're roughly as far apart as 2 places in Singapore can be. And that single fact is the reason 3, 4, and 5 days are genuinely different trips, rather than the same trip at different speeds. Now, 2 rules before we start building. Rule 1. In Singapore, the map lies about time. The island is small, so first-timers assume everything's quick, but distance is almost never what costs you. What costs you is the hours spent inside attractions, plus queues, plus meals, plus the heat, plus the fact that some stations here are genuinely deep. Bencoolen and Promenade can be 3 escalator rides from platform to street. A hop that looks like 10 minutes on your phone can honestly run 25. Get enough of those wrong in one day, and you stop sightseeing and start commuting. Rule 2. Schedule by temperature, not just geography. Singapore sits about 1 degree off the equator, so it's roughly 32 degrees Celsius, around 90 Fahrenheit, with heavy humidity most days of the year. The best pacing rule anyone will give you here is simple. Outdoors in the morning, air conditioning through the middle of the day, back outdoors in the evening. Get that backwards and you'll lose the afternoon to a hotel room, which is the most common way people quietly lose a day here. And one last thing before we build, because it saves you money in about 30 seconds. You almost certainly don't need a tourist transit pass. Singapore's trains and trams run on a system called SimplyGo, and you can tap a foreign Visa or MasterCard or your phone straight at the gate. There's a lot of confusion online about a 60% foreign card fee, with people assuming it's charged every time you tap. It isn't. SimplyGo's own terms state it's 60 Singapore cents per day of use, however many rides you take. Across a 4-day trip, that's under $2.50 total. The tourist pass starts around $17 a day, and as a rough rule, it only pays for itself if you're riding most of the day, rather than making a few hops between sites. Most people don't. One thing to get right though, tap in and out with the same card or device. Mix your phone and your plastic and the system reads 2 incomplete journeys, then charges you the maximum fare on both. Same card in, same card out. If that just saved you the price of a tourist pass, hit the like button, it genuinely helps. And subscribe if you want the rest of this Singapore series, because trip length is only the first decision you have to make. Right, 3 full days. 3 days in Singapore isn't a shorter version of a longer trip, it's a triage exercise. You're protecting 3 things and deliberately abandoning everything else. And if you're trying to protect 4, you'll do all 4 badly. So here's what 3 days protects. Block 1 is the bay. You already know what this looks like, so let's skip the postcard and talk about what it costs you. The Flower Dome and the Cloud Forest, the 2 cooled glass conservatories at Gardens by the Bay, take most people 2 to 3 hours together. And that's before the outdoor gardens or the free light show at the Super Tree Grove after dark. Treat the bay as a full day and you'll enjoy it. Treat it as a morning and you'll spend the afternoon rushing. There's a genuinely useful scheduling trick buried in there. Those conservatories are cooled to around 23 to 25 degrees. So they aren't just an attraction, they're your midday shelter. Do the waterfront early, move inside the domes when the heat peaks, then come back out for the light show in the evening. That's one location solving your entire thermal problem for the day. Block 2 is the Old Quarters. This is where a 3-day trip earns its character, and it's where the food is. Chinatown, Kampong Glam, Little India and Bugis sit close enough that you can chain 2 of them in a day with almost no transit cost. What matters here isn't how they differ, it's that they cluster. Clustering is what buys you time. Block 3 is flexible, and this is where your personality shows up. It's either a food-led day, a slower neighborhood day, or, and here's the fork in the road, one of the 2 outliers. Which brings us to the thing we teased at the start. If you spend 1 of 3 days on Sentosa, you've spent a third of your trip. People underestimate this constantly because Sentosa gets described like a beach you pop across to. It really isn't. Universal Studios on its own is a full-day theme park. Add the ocean area, and now you've got a second multi-hour attraction on the same island. And once you account for the train, then the monorail or the boardwalk, you're looking at 30 to 45 minutes each way just to get on and off the island. So here's the honest verdict. On 3 days, Sentosa's only worth it if Sentosa's one of the actual reasons you're coming. If your kids have been promised Universal, then book it, and accept that you're now taking a 2-day city trip. But if you came for the food, the neighborhoods and the skyline, cut Sentosa completely, and don't feel guilty about it. You aren't missing Singapore, you're missing a resort island. The same logic applies even harder to Mandai in the north. Between the travel time and the sheer size of the parks, Mandai isn't a half day you can bolt onto something else. It's a day. Plan it as one or don't plan it at all. And on 3 days, that means it's a no. So, 3 days is the right call if you're on a stopover, if you're a couple or traveling solo, or if what you genuinely came for is the food in the city. It's the wrong call if you've got young children, if anyone in your group needs a slower pace, or if a theme park or the wildlife parks are non-negotiable for your family. Because at 3 days, those things stop being additions, they become substitutions. So, what does a 4th day actually buy you? Not another attraction, a choice. And this is the single most useful idea in this video because it's the part almost every itinerary gets wrong. On 4 full days, you keep your entire city core intact. The bay, the old quarters, a proper food day, and then you add exactly 1 destination day. 1, not 2. And you have to choose, Sentosa or Mandai. You can't do both on 4 days without gutting the city half of your trip. And you absolutely cannot do them on the same day. They sit at opposite ends of the island, and pairing them is probably the worst single sequencing decision available to you in Singapore. So, 4 days isn't the sweet spot because it's comfortable. It's the sweet spot because it's the first trip length where you get a real choice without paying for it somewhere else. 3 days makes you sacrifice something. 4 days makes you choose between two good things. That's a completely different emotional experience, and it's why most first-timers should book it. There's a budget consequence worth naming here too. That 4th day is usually the most expensive day of your trip, because a destination day means tickets. A theme park day or a wildlife day can easily run 50 to 85 Singapore dollars a head before food, whereas the city days, the hawker meals, the temples, the waterfront, the light show are close to free by comparison. So, an extra day doesn't automatically mean an extra expensive day. It depends entirely on which day you add. So, 4 days is right for most first-time couples, for general first-timers, and for anyone who wants one big attraction day without feeling like they skipped the city. It's not enough if you're traveling with young kids and you want both the theme park and the wildlife parks, because that's a 5-day trip whether you booked one or not. And if you'd rather have the tickets locked in before you land, our Expedia and Get Your Guide links are in the description. They're affiliate links, so they support the channel without costing you anything extra. So, let's settle the choice, because this is the decision that defines a 4-day trip. Start with Sentosa. It's the resort island, and the two anchors are Universal Studios and the Singapore Oceanarium, which replaced the old aquarium in 2025 at around 3 times the size. One thing that trips people up before they even arrive: there's no blanket entry fee for the island itself, despite how often that comes up. You can walk the boardwalk from Vivo City for nothing. The monorail runs a few dollars, and once you're on the island, the internal buses and beach shuttles are free. So, the cost of Sentosa isn't getting there, it's the attractions and the day it takes. Sentosa's the right choice if you have children under about 12, if a theme park is genuinely on your family's wish list, or if you want a day that's easy, air-conditioned in parts, and doesn't require much planning. It's also the better pick if you want the option of a beach afternoon and a short day rather than a long one. Now, Mandai. And Mandai has changed more than almost anything else in Singapore over the last 2 years, which matters because older guides describe it badly. It used to be simple. You went to the zoo, maybe you added the night safari. That instruction no longer works. Mandai now runs 6 major attractions: Singapore Zoo, River Wonders, Bird Paradise, the Night Safari, Rainforest Wild Adventure, and a newer indoor experience called Exploria. Rainforest Wild opened its first zone in 2025 and its second in May of 2026, and it's built around canopy walks and caving rather than conventional enclosures. So, go to Mandai is now a question, not an answer. You have to pick 2, realistically, and you have to accept the travel. Mandai sits in the far north, and it's roughly 45 minutes to an hour each way on public transport from the city centre. Add the parks themselves and you're at 8 to 10 hours door to door. Mandai is the right choice if animals are a real priority rather than a nice to have. If you have children who'll get more out of a wildlife day than a theme park, or if you want a day that feels nothing like the rest of Singapore. It's also, for a lot of families, the more comfortable option, because the parks provide stroller and wagon rental, nursing rooms, and complimentary wheelchairs. And if you're wondering about doing both on one day, no, not the zoo and the night safari back-to-back after a full day of sightseeing either. That combination gets recommended constantly online, and it's how people end up finishing a 14-hour day in a queue at 9 at night with a miserable 8-year-old. So, the tiebreaker. If your group skews younger and you want spectacle and predictability, take Sentosa. If your group skews towards nature, or you want something genuinely distinctive from a Singapore trip, take Mandai. And if the debate in your household can't be settled, that's not a failure of the argument, that's just your trip telling you it wants 5 days. Actually, let's settle it. Pause this and put one word in the comments: Sentosa or Mandai. And if there's someone sitting next to you right now who'd pick the other one, put both, and tell us which of you's winning. We're genuinely curious of how this splits because our guess is it isn't close, and it isn't the one you'd expect. Which brings us to the 5th day. And this is the one people get most wrong in the opposite direction, because they assume 5 days means more sightseeing. It doesn't. What a 5th day actually buys you is slack. Think of it as insurance rather than content, and it pays out in 4 different ways depending on who you are. The first is the obvious one. 5 days is the first length where you stop choosing, and you can do both Sentosa and Mandai. That's it. That's the entire either-or problem from the last 2 chapters solved. The second is pacing, and this is the one families feel most. On 5 days, you can break the long days in half. You can go back to the hotel at 2 in the afternoon when the heat peaks, let small children sleep, and come back out at 5. That's not laziness. In this climate, it's the difference between a trip everyone remembers fondly and a trip nobody wants to repeat. The third is depth, and it's genuinely the best version of a 5th day for a lot of travelers. Because Singapore has a whole layer that a 4-day trip never touches. The East Coast, around Katong and Joo Chiat with its Peranakan shop houses and its own food culture. Tiong Bahru, the low-rise Art Deco neighborhood full of cafes, and one of the city's best-loved wet markets. The Botanic Gardens, which are free, enormous, and a genuine escape from the skyline. None of those are on a first-timers list, all of them are on a 5th-timers list. And the 4th is weather. Singapore gets short, heavy, unpredictable thunderstorms, and they mostly show up in the late morning and afternoon. On a 4-day trip, a bad storm on the wrong day damages your itinerary because there's nowhere to move things to. On a 5-day trip, it's an inconvenience, you just shuffle a block. So here's the whole ladder in a single line. 3 days buys you Singapore's core, 4 days buys you a choice, and 5 days buys you resilience. Which means 5 is the right call if you're traveling with children, with anyone older, or with mobility limits, if food is the main reason you're coming, or if both Sentosa and Mandai matter to your group. It's the wrong call if the icons are all you actually want and the accommodation budget's tight, because at that point you're paying Singapore hotel rates for comfort rather than content. The purpose of a 5th day should be visible before you book it. If it isn't solving a problem you can name out loud, save the money and spend it somewhere else on the trip. Now, everything we've just built assumes your plan survives contact with reality. So here are the things that quietly delete a day, in the order they're most likely to catch you. Start with the one nobody sees coming. Gardens by the Bay closes its attractions for maintenance 1 day a month. Not the whole park, and this is the part that matters, not on the same day. The Flower Dome and the Cloud Forest have separate maintenance calendars, and so do Floral Fantasy and the OCBC Skyway. So you can arrive on a perfectly good day for one dome and find the other shut. The fix takes 30 seconds. Check the closure dates on the garden's website before you lock your bay day, not after. Second, hawker stalls close on set days, and the famous ones are the worst offenders. Tien Tien at Maxwell Food Center, which is probably the single most recommended chicken rice stall in the country, is closed on Mondays. Plenty of others close Monday or Sunday. And check the stall, not the building. A hawker center being open tells you nothing about whether the one stall you cross the city for is. There's a particular kind of disappointment in standing in front of a shuttered counter you planned a whole afternoon around. Third, timing inside the hawker centers. Show up at Maxwell at 12:30 on a weekday and you're competing with the financial district for a table. Shift lunch to 11 or 2 and the same meal becomes a different experience. Fourth, one that's purely about arriving at the right hour. Lau Pa Sat is the Victorian market hall in the middle of the business district, and at 7 in the evening the street beside it, Boon Tat Street, closes to traffic and turns into an open-air satay market with charcoal grills down the middle of the road. Arrive at 6 and you've seen a food court. Arrive after 7 and you've seen the thing people actually talk about. And fifth, the arrival day trap at the airport. Jewel, the glass dome attached to Changi with the enormous indoor waterfall, is genuinely worth seeing, and it's free. But the waterfall itself doesn't run around the clock. It generally starts mid-morning, around 10. So if you land at 6 in the morning and you plan to see Jewel on the way in, you may well be looking at a very impressive empty hole. If your arrival's early, flip it. Do dual on your departure day instead, when you're heading back out anyway. That single swap can save you a scarce half day in the city. 4 days is the default, but a default's only useful if you know when to ignore it, so here's who should. If you're traveling with kids, add a day. Whatever number you landed on, add one. Not because there's more to see, but because the heat compresses what children can physically do, and because the two attractions kids care about most, Universal and the wildlife parks, are the two that consume whole days. One quick flag worth knowing, the Cloud Forest is currently running an immersive dinosaur experience with animatronics, loud sound and flashing lights. So if you've got a child who's sensitive to that, plan around it. If you're traveling multi-generationally, with grandparents or with anyone who has mobility limits, add a day as well. And this isn't really about age, it's that a group moves at the pace of its slowest member, so that's the pace you should actually be planning around. A schedule that's perfectly comfortable for 2 fit adults can be genuinely miserable for a group that needs more shade, more sitting down, and fewer long walking blocks in a row. If food is the reason you're coming, 4 days and cut both outliers. No Sentosa, no Mandai. Spend that 4th day on the hawker centers and the neighborhoods instead, and time your meals off-peak. A food-first Singapore trip is one of the best value trips in Asia, and it gets actively worse when you spend a day on a theme park. If you're a couple, 3 days works and 4 is comfortable. Protect the evenings because that's when this city is at its best and its coolest. Front-load the sightseeing and leave your nights open. And if you're traveling solo, 3 gets easier still, because there's no group vote every morning and nobody waiting on anybody else to be ready. And if you're on a stopover, be realistic about the clock. Under about 5 or 6 hours between flights, stay at the airport. If you've got longer, Singapore runs a free 2.5-hour guided tour for transit passengers on layovers of roughly 5.5 to 24 hours, which is one of the better deals in international travel. With a full day, you can do the bay properly and still make your flight, but you're picking one zone, not 3. Because, before we give you the final verdict, there are 4 things about Singapore right now that will break an otherwise good plan. First, the good news. The Circle Line finally became an actual circle. Stage 6 opened on the 12th of July 2026, adding 3 stations and connecting Harbourfront directly to Marina Bay. In plain terms, if your trip involves Sentosa, getting between the south coast and the bay just got noticeably simpler. Any guide showing you a broken loop is out of date. Second, and this one's live right now, the downtown line is closing early on Friday nights at 11:30 and opening late on Saturday mornings at 8:30, running through to the 5th of September 2026 while they finish integration work. That's the line that serves Chinatown, Bugis, Little India, and Bayfront for Gardens by the Bay, so it's very much a tourist line. If you're here on a Friday night or a Saturday morning before this ends, plan around it. Shuttle buses run on the Saturday mornings only. Third, if your date lands in October, look carefully. The Formula 1 Grand Prix runs the 9th through the 11th of October 2026. And for the first time, Singapore hosts a sprint weekend, so it's a bigger event than usual. The circuit is a street track wrapped around Marina Bay, roads close progressively for days beforehand, and hotel rates in that area go somewhere unpleasant. It's a fantastic week to be here for the race. It's a poor week to run a normal Marina Bay itinerary. And fourth, a quick note on outdated guides. If a video or article still tells you to visit the SEA Aquarium or describes Mandai as just a zoo and a night safari, it was written before 2025 and it's steering you with old information. Both have changed substantially. So, the verdict, and we'll keep it short. Book 3 full days if Singapore's a stopover, if you're traveling as a couple or solo, and if the city and the food are what you came for. Cut Sentosa and Mandai entirely and you'll have a good trip. Book 4 days if you're a typical first-timer. It's the sweet spot, and it's the sweet spot because it's the first length where you get one destination day without sacrificing the city. Pick Sentosa or Mandai, not both. Book 5 full days if you're traveling with children, with older travelers if food's your priority, or if your group genuinely wants both big attractions. The 5th day isn't more sightseeing, it's the day that keeps a storm, a queue, or a tired child from wrecking everything else. And remember the rule we started with: count usable days, not nights. If you want 4 full days, book 5 nights. Now, there's one decision left, and it changes how well any of these plans actually work: where you sleep. Because the right neighborhood can cut half an hour off every single morning of this trip, and the wrong one adds it back. We've broken down every first-timer area in Singapore by budget and by trip type, including the 2 areas we'd tell you not to book at all. That video's on screen now. Watch that next one and your Singapore trip's essentially planned. Thanks for watching the Itinerant Traveler. Until next time, safe and happy travels.